do. I think the prelude before saying a few things about the walk was really just to talk about why this organization exists. We are the state organization for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I think you might kind of resonate with some of this, kind of what you hear in the news and what you see in the community. But the reality is that mental illness is very prevalent, and it may or may not affect people in this room, but the numbers are this, that 1 in 4 individuals in any given year will experience some type of mental health disorder. And so any type of mental health disorder, well, that doesn't sound too overwhelming, but 1 in 17, which is still a big number when you look at Shawnee County, 1 in 17 individuals is living with a serious mental health disorder like major depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or post-traumatic stress. Those are some examples. And many of those can be disabling. And then the other thing that I think is important for folks in the community to know is that 60%, more than 60% of adults with a serious mental illness like I've just named are not in treatment. And more than half of children with serious mental health conditions are not in treatment. And so we have, this represents, this takes a toll on community life. The Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City did a study, and they came up with the finding that the cost of untreated mental illness in Kansas, statewide, is $1.17 billion a year. Billion. And most of that, it's not about what it costs to pay for treatment in Vallejo, because remember, this is the cost of untreated mental illness. So those costs are mostly about, people who, because they don't get treatment, end up homeless, end up in jail, end up in prison. But really, the lion's share of that $1 billion a year is lost productivity and lost wages. So employers are really losing, and individuals have their well-being compromised because in many cases they're not working or not working in capacity. And unemployment among people with serious mental illness is around 85%. So we have an interest in working on these issues. Our members, we're the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and our members are first individuals who have a lived experience of mental illness and their family members. So there's a lot of people in the community that we can be of assistance to. We have, our basic structure is that we have programs providing peer support, education, and advocacy. So those are the things that we do on behalf of our members who experience a mental illness. And so as you think about kind of who you know, and in your family, and your associates, and your church, and your organization, I'm sure that you know individuals who have encountered mental illness, a son, a daughter, a wife, a grandfather, somebody in your world, and that's who we're here to serve. I've got a couple things that I'll pass around, and let's see, I'll just give Vern 3 copies for that side of the table, and 3 of these, and I just brought 4 things. Try not to overwhelm you. 3 of those, 3 of these, however many that is. And so the more boring piece I'll dispense with first, the kind of the photocopies that starts with the page that says what is NAMI, is really a compilation of a few things that will tell you in a little more detail what our organization, who we are, what we do, and in there you'll have some facts about mental illness and some of the things that I've gone through, as well as a listing of our local affiliates. So we have a state organization here in Topeka, but we're really a very small organization staff-wise. There's only 3 of us running the state organization. We have a network of 16 local affiliates and support groups, and you'll find that listing in there. NAMI Topeka has a regular meeting schedule here in Shawnee County. We teach classes like the family-to-family education class and others in Topeka on a regular basis, and we have probably on a statewide basis a couple of hundred volunteers who are working on behalf of NAMI, doing these education programs, running these peer support groups, and involved with advocacy. I mean, just yesterday we learned that in an effort to balance the books on the education bill that the Supreme Court handed the legislature, that one of the things they're looking at is selling the Rainbow Mental Health Facility and taking those funds and moving them outside of the mental health system to cover some of those costs. And this is disturbing to us because we kind of had a deal with the administration that they would, that any sale of Rainbow, that those funds would be retained in the mental health system. And so, you know, things are happening all the time. They've cut $15 or $20 million out of the mental health system in the last 5 or 6 years. And you have to kind of stack that up against the fact that we're talking about more than half of adults and children with serious mental health conditions are not getting treatment. And so if anything, we need to figure out how to create more access to those services. So for us, this is the flyer which we'd like you to have and figure out someplace in town where you can put it up in a storefront or a bulletin board somewhere. This promotes our annual walk event. It's a fun event. We'd be happy to have you and others from your network of friends and colleagues attend. We'll be in Gage Park on the first Saturday in May. This is, you might say it's a symbolic gathering. It's an attempt to kind of be out in the public talking about mental illness, which for many people is something they'd rather not talk about. And so we think it's important to talk about mental illness, and because maybe a generation or so ago we didn't talk about cancer. It was hush-hush. And then the AIDS virus came along. We didn't talk about that. But these are illnesses. These are illnesses. The governor came to our event a couple of weeks ago at the Maynard Center, and I think we appreciated his statement that these are treatable illnesses. And so if we can just get people access to treatment, they are treatable. Unfortunately, we don't have cure. Medical science has not come up with a cure for bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, which can be very disabling. But people getting the right treatment can live decent lives, can live lives at a level of recovery. I will just say that our current board president is a successful attorney in Wichita. He lives with major depression.
Is that a misnomer?
What?
Successful attorney?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry to, cross that line. But
successful because he's not depressed.
my point is that having a serious mental illness does not relegate you to live in somebody's basement and have a marginal life. That he's raising, he's providing for his family. He has an income, and yes, he has to deal with this illness just like you or I might have to deal with a heart condition or some other medical condition that doesn't really deprive us of a life. It's just another inconvenience. Most of our board members and officers are individuals who are living at a level of recovery, living with mental illness, or family members who have a loved one. So we have that connection with people. And we talk about this all the time. So the walk is really an event, a public event, where we come out and kind of demonstrate our interest in talking about mental health. But it's, of course, it's also a fundraising event for us. It has two objectives: to raise awareness about mental illness and the work that NAMI does, and to raise money for our state organization and our 16 local affiliates across the state. And really the work of the walk is being done now by volunteers who go online, register for the walk, ask friends and neighbors and family to make a donation to NAMI on their behalf, to their individual website that they create through our NAMI Walk page. And so for us, the event itself is really a culmination. It's really a celebration of the work that folks around the state have been doing for the last few weeks. Yes, sir.
So, if I heard correctly, then through NAMI, then you're able to set up a site to accept the donations, and then
Absolutely.
So your name, and it gets fed back to NAMI like a personal linked sort of a Indiegogo or GoFundMe or something.
Actually, people go to this NAMIWalks.org page, and it's all, you click through, and there's Vern's picture and his encouraging message to his teammates, and yeah, people can donate online, so then you get to see right away, oh, John and Mary and Susie, yes, they've contributed. Yeah, people send in checks the old-fashioned way as well, and we can post them to that site for them. So it's not a sponsor me 10 cents a mile kind of thing. It's really an opportunity for us to reach out to people outside of our organization, kind of tell a little bit of the story about mental illness, what's going on in the community, the work that NAMI does to support families who are affected by mental illness, and to ask folks to make a donation. And so, you know, not most people, but quite often people will make a donation, small amounts, large amounts. One of our board members in 2 days, now he's unusual, but we'd like to find more people like him. In the last 2 days, he's raised $5,000 for his team. So we've still got basically another month to go before the walk, and so that website is up and running, available for people too, and it's well designed and it works nicely. We have a close working relationship here in Topeka with the mental health community, with the Vallejo Community Behavioral Health Care, which is the mental health center here in town. And they're part of the walk event with us, because they understand, you know, we don't provide therapy, or we don't write prescriptions for people and provide treatment per se, and they do. But our role is really to support individuals outside of that treatment venue. And we're the support group, we're the support system for people. We're the place where they can get educated about mental illness and realize what they're up against and what resources they have that they can draw on. And the main thing, and I'm sure you know this from other health experiences that you've had, when someone has cancer or some other condition in your family, you reach out to other people who've been through that, who've experienced that, and you learn from their experiences. And that's true as well for mental illness. And the thing about mental illness is that for the most part it's a lifelong condition. So, and 75% of the cases of serious mental illness begin in that age range of 16 to 25. So all of a sudden you've got the kid that you raised, perfectly normal son or daughter, they go off to KU, K-State, or wherever, and then one day I get a phone call from the mom or the dad saying, you know, Johnny's had a psychotic break, This came out of nowhere, and that's how it happens. We don't really understand how the brain works. We can't predict these things. We're 50 years behind the treatment of conditions like cardiac care. The death rate, I mean, in my father's day, who had a heart attack when he was 48, he survived that, but ultimately he succumbed. But in that generation, the death rate from cardiac disease was phenomenal. It's dropped way down. People survive these cardiac conditions. They have bypass operations. They have other kinds of surgical and medical treatments. But the death rate, if I can put it that way, from mental illness has not dropped in the last 50 years. And so what is that? The Surgeon General says that people with serious mental illness die on average 25 years younger than the general population from a variety of factors.
It's my observation that people with mental illness who found the right psychotropic medication really did well. Has that not lessened the numbers or the effect?
Well, it works for those people. And it's just that, kind of go back to some of the numbers. 60% are not in treatment, so they're out there being homeless, being unemployed, all this, being more of a drain. See you, Larry. Good luck to you. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think we used to have, if we go back to maybe, I'm 63, so when I was growing up, if an adult at that period of time in the 50s were to have had a serious episode of mental illness, they might have spent, as my aunt did on my father's side, she spent the majority of her adult life in a state institution. Then along came the psychotropic medications, and they realized people could live outside the institution and function. And so they started shutting the institutions down. We lost Topeka State Hospital here. It's the same story. We lost beds at Larned and Osawatomie as well. So the trouble is we didn't keep the promise. We didn't keep the promise to reinvest the savings from the closure of the state hospitals into the community-based system. And what happened now, and this is going a little farther afield than your question, but what happened is you saw psychiatric beds come down over a period of time, and number of beds for people with serious mental illness in county jails went up. And that's where they are. The Shawnee County Jail, or Shawnee County Department of Corrections, is the largest mental health facility in this county. So, but to answer your question directly, yes, for many people, recovery is achievable. Well, recovery is achievable for everyone, but for those who are lucky enough to get the right treatment, the right time, and the right amount, they can live, like my board president, a very successful life.
Will the Affordable Care Act, if it's fully implemented, then be a possible solution to part of this?
Well, I think it will, and to the extent that millions of people will have access to health insurance, which will include mental health care. And because of a law signed when George W. Bush was president, health insurance now has to treat mental illness like any other illness. So we can't say, well, you have a cardiac condition, therefore you're entitled to this level of care, but this one over here has bipolar disorder, and so we're going to give you second-rate care. They have to treat them with parity, and they're still working out exactly what that means, but that law has been in effect since '08, and in the Affordable Care Act, they wove that parity thing in, they overlaid it with so the policies that they sell on the insurance exchange that meet the terms of the Affordable Care Act have to comply with those standards. So it will help, yeah. And I think the emerging science suggests that we heard a presentation from the director of the National Institute of Mental Health, and his view was we shouldn't be calling these mental illnesses. We should be calling, and he had a fancier term, he wanted to call them neurodevelopmental disorders. And by that he meant, first of all, it's about the brain and genetic things that we inherit. And the other thing is we have exposures to environmental things, whether it's trauma, someone is raped or kidnapped or something bad happens that affects their wiring, or perhaps chemical influences, environmental things that they're exposed to. And we don't know exactly what triggers one child to have this psychotic episode at age 18 or 19, and another one survives and doesn't have that kind of experience. So, but we do know that if we catch it early, there's a better chance of recovery. So the individual who has a psychotic break at age 20 and then kind of lives a life of denial that, oh no, I don't have a mental illness, doesn't want to kind of face up to that, doesn't want to engage in treatment, spends the next 10 or 15 years wandering around, not dealing with their reality, they're going to lose brain function, and they're going to lose the ability to kind of regain their ability to recover. It'll be much harder for that 40-year-old to get back on top of their game than if we could get to them at age 22 when it happens. That's really what we need to be doing. So we're going to take, in the next year, we're going to be doing more about going into high schools and talking with freshmen and sophomores, going on to college campuses, talking to kids in that age range, because well, like your organization, our organization is kind of graying out, and we, the parents who raised that child, they're now in their 60s or 70s. They're the ones who founded NAMI 30, 35 years ago. But it's important. We now know that we have to reach that younger demographic.
You mentioned advocacy. Do you have the joy of lobbying down at the legislature?
I do have the joy, but I don't have the luxury of going over there and spending all week or all month there, so I go when I need to and try to keep it to a minimum. But like last night when we learned about the sale of Rainbow and the diversion of those funds, then we kind of sprung into action and got something out to all of our members and asked them to contact Vicki Schmidt, Laura Kelly, and the other members of the Topeka delegation and they'll be very supportive. But some of the other legislators from around the state, I'm afraid, are going to try to do the wrong thing.
It just seems like in Kansas, some people and some politicians don't want to take care of the disadvantaged, no matter how they're disadvantaged.
And it costs us. The neglect costs us. I mean, what we try to say to the legislators is we can treat the person with a serious mental illness in the mental health center for a few bucks a day. It's kind of the daily cost. But if we have to send them to Osawatomie State Hospital, now we're talking $300 and some a day. If we have to send them to Shawnee County Department of Corrections, because now they've done something where they've crossed the line, gotten into trouble, we're talking $100, $150 a day, depending on the medications that the sheriff has to pay for. And that doesn't count the court cost and the cost of probation, probation officers and court services and all that. So it's short-sighted not to be able to get people the services in the community. And Vallejo's up to here with customers. So I think the media does help, and it's important for us to do things like the walk, to just come out and say, look, we're 300 people, and many of us live with serious mental illness, or we have loved ones who do, and it's okay to talk about this, and let's do what we can to support these folks in our community.